Hello and welcome to Do the Impossible with Jason and Stephen, the podcast that seeks to inspire and amaze you. And now please welcome your hosts, Jason Michaels and Stephen Bargatze. All right, welcome everybody to Do the Impossible podcast with Jason and Stephen. My name is Jason Michaels, glad to be back with you, and my co-host Stephen Bargatze is still at his home.
Still
He is
quarantine inside the quarantine. I'm actually listening to the doctors and staying completely off my leg. And but I got my Grinch on. So that's how I feel.
Are you wearing the Grinch? That's your mental state? Is that what's going on?
That's my mental state.
That's because of the foot. But
you know what? I saw it was on Facebook, but it was the greatest thing ever. This guy set up like these kids meeting Santa Claus. So they think the kids think they're going to meet Santa Claus or an elf or a reindeer, and they sit in the chair, and then the Grinch comes out. And so
I think I saw photographs of the kids are losing they're scared to death.
I thought it was the greatest idea ever. Every picture is kids running, screaming, passing out, and I'm the kind of parent. And yes, I would have taken my kids there. But, I did a show.
I wonder why our kids are so whacked out right nowadays.
I've done a Christmas show for over. I'm going on this would have been my 27th year to do it for a children's hospital every year. And except this year I did not get to do it thanks to the pandemic, but I actually play the Grinch's cousin. I always say, even I'm the Grinch's cousin, and I don't like any of you kids here. And so I get to play. I play that role, and that's just a perfect role for me. As that, and where the kids they love to hate you and yell at you and stuff like that, but. It's just a great thing. So I'm a big Grinch guy anyway. But tell us who we got here today, Jason.
We're excited to be joined today by Billy Diamond. And I've chatted with Billy a couple of times now over the last couple of weeks. I enjoyed getting to know him. Has a really fascinating story from an entertainment background, but as if you've listened to the podcast or if you're just now coming to the podcast for the first time, the whole goal of our podcast are two things: to bring you both amazement and inspiration. And the amazement comes in the form, for the simple fact that Stephen and I both come from a magic background. So there's that side of the amazement, but the amazement combines with the inspiration and the fact that we are meeting real people who have real stories of overcoming adversity and dealing with, learning how to become more resilient, dealing with different issues that we just, the thing that we've learned is that everybody's dealing with something in life, and we are here to learn from each other. And so I'm excited to introduce you all to Billy Diamond. Thanks for joining us, Billy.
Yeah, Billy.
Absolutely. Thanks. Absolutely. Very much of a pleasure to be with you guys for sure.
So we were chatting for a couple minutes before we really technically started the podcast. And one of the things that is interesting is one of the things that is funny to me is that Stephen and I started this podcast off with the idea that we would certainly meet people from all sorts of different walks of life. And we've met people, and we have. But we have a strong connection with entertainers, and you come from an entertainment background. So tell us just a little bit about how that started and kind of where you come from as far as that goes, and what that was, because that was a major part of your life for a very long time and still is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. I think I was like most kids that saw a magic show said, "Oh my gosh, this is absolutely fascinating."
Yeah.
And I knew in first grade, after seeing that first Magic Assembly school show, that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life, somehow, some way. And so long story short, I did. I began to do the magic, and I also came from a background of just alcoholism, and dad was never around. He worked a lot, and mom and dad fought a lot. So I was always with mom, but I always kind of had my magic to cling to, and that's kind of what kept me going for a long time. Um, like most kid magicians, I started doing shows for the neighborhood, and before I knew it, like most people, ended up doing banquets and then corporate events. And let me see, I think by the time I was 18, probably have one of my biggest accomplishments. SAM, which for those that might not know, is the Society of American Magicians. I was 18 at the time, and they did just a small blurb that I was one of the youngest in the world to actually recreate Houdini's underwater trunk escape. So that was a neat accomplishment for me. So over the years, I've had these accolades, and they really don't mean a whole lot, but I guess I guess really, all in all, I just always really enjoyed being in front of people, um, and doing the magic and just making people smile and laugh. And I know you guys can relate to that, and maybe some of the audience can, and others maybe not so much. But yeah, so
So,
yeah,
well, I mean, one of the things that when the pandemic struck, I've known this for a long time because as an entertainer in my career, sometimes I'll go through very busy periods of business, and other times you're a little bit quieter and you don't have as many shows going on.
sure.
And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and it became very clear to me what I already believed is that there is you get a lot of emotional, I don't know if it's emotional connection, but there's something that happens when you're standing in front of an audience and they are either laughing or they're applauding, but there's an energy that is transferred, and there's a sense of love that you're getting. You're getting this sense of,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's just a sense of accomplishment, but the audience is saying, hey, we love you. They come up to you afterwards, they say, oh, we love what you did. So there's something that is happening that would I be, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but would I be correct in saying that when you were in front of these audiences as a young person, you were getting something emotionally that you may not have been getting from your
I,
dad?
Absolutely. In hindsight, absolutely. Could I see it then? No way.
Right.
But yeah, and now, and I'm sure it's the same for both you and Stephen, and it's really a give and take. Boy, isn't it wonderful? Like, you can get that from the audience, but you're also giving that, and it's just a mutual thing. But like you said, though, back then, I didn't know that. I didn't know that the magic was what really propped me up on stage, and really was my that was, that was a big emotional connection for me and a big support. Um, I think that's probably why I had an ego at one point too. So, we always hear the entertainers having these egos, and I don't know. I just thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread at one point,
Sure.
and I don't know where I'm heading with that, but just it's really easy to get caught up in. I think some of that even comes from the love of the audience, and like you say, them coming up to you after the show and saying, "Oh man, that's so great! You're so wonderful." So that is something that I've kind of had to deal with over the years, and I'm definitely a much different person now. I try to be as humble as possible. I don't know, as an entertainer, I don't know how humble a guy can be, but, but
Stephen,
you get my idea.
is that something that, Stephen, tell me, do you feel the same way? I mean, is that the type of thing that we're
You know what?
getting something?
I always kid, and I talk to both. Bill, you might, I don't know if you know this, and unfortunately, there's probably people out there that's making a bet. How long will he go before he has his son? And but I have a son, Nate Bargatze. He has a Netflix special out called The Tennessee Kid right now, and he just filmed his second 1 hour one. But I remember even talking to his wife and my wife talking to her uh, when they were dating and stuff about being with an entertainer, and she would go, yeah, but sometimes, he comes home really late at night and I don't know where he's at and what he's doing. And I remember my wife goes, well, you don't have to worry about if he's with other comics, they're talking about comics. They're not, you have no idea.
They're not carousing.
If we're out to 2 o'clock in the morning, we're talking to them about magic. It don't matter what. And but it was I also told her, you know, I remember talking to Nate and stuff, you know, what's hard is you go get that standing ovation and you've been on the road a couple of days and then you come home and you're on a little bit of a high, and yet the grass hasn't been cut and the garbage is piled up, and now you know there's no standing ovations out there while you're taking that trash out or cutting that grass.
Yeah.
But it has to be done, and you have to be able to judge those two lifestyles and just realize that, yeah, look, it is a job, and my wife has a job, and taking home with those kids. You know, I learned really early on, you know, because we eat out all the time on the road, and when I come home, I don't want to eat out. I want to sit home and eat here and eat something.
Sure.
But guess what? It's the opposite for her. She's been sitting there. So I learned that whenever she would pick me up from the airport, no matter what, we went out to eat. And and then my job was to guess where she wanted to go because she always said she didn't care. That's a lie. But she does care. But so you have to figure that out. But I mean, we had to go out and eat. I wasn't about to say, no, let's go home and make a bologna sandwich. It's probably what you're having. So,
well, at least she didn't say, well, hey, Stephen, let's just pick up and go live in a hotel for 7 days or so.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's glamorous, right?
Oh yeah.
So, you know, you guys, so what you just said reminded me of a feeling that I have had after performing a show, and I've talked to other entertainers who have the same feeling, and I want to hear from you guys. Have you ever had the situation where you do a show and let's say you just do you get the high from the show and you come off the stage and the next day you're down in the dumps, like you just personally feel like it's almost like a very light depression and you're frustrated and you're upset and you can't figure out why you're in a sort of a sad mood. What's the story there?
Yeah, I know for me, and that's it was one of the things that even as Stephen was talking, it was already in the back of my mind. I was going to ask the same exact question. And for me, it was always when I was on the road full time. Now I'm not now. So when I was really on the road full time and schlepping from place to place, before I met my wife and we were doing it together, I was by myself. So it wasn't even by the time I got home. It was from the time I left the stage and got into the hotel room at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when it really hit me. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so alone. What? This is weird. Entertainers just live such a crazy lifestyle. If we stop and think about it, you know, you're in front of people. You might be in front of thousands of people at a time, and then the next thing you know, you're by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is it any wonder that we battle with these thoughts? So yeah, for me, that was there were times that I would become very depressed, and you begin to feed on that and thrive on, I can't wait to do my next show just so I can be in front of people. So yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. Stephen, what about you? Have you experienced stuff like that?
Just what a lot of people do. I did my one and only Christmas show last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess, on a Friday. And I could not have done that if it hadn't been for Jason Michaels. And it was one of these, it was for a former football player for the Titans, Kevin Long, great football player, great guy. And I did some stuff for his company before. It was a really small gathering Christmas show. And Kevin didn't know Jason or anything like that. And I tried, that's right when I broke my foot and I was having problems with it. And so I ended up going. The only way I could go is get Jason to go with me, carry all my stuff in, set everything up, and then stand up there and help me with any way I needed to do and anything did. So he made the show possible. But I remember I almost cried just talking to the audience. It's like I wanted to thank them for having me. It's like this is such a great. It felt so good because it's been so long without doing anything. And after the show, I mean, it was such medicine to me to do that show that I mean, because surely everybody's gone through some bad times during this pandemic. We're just losing our mind. And,
Sure.
to find out you're not essential. And
Right.
so, so then
We're not. I'm just now finding this out.
but it was such a great feeling. But here's what was different about it. And Jason will know. I did this new trick that was kind of new, not that enough. Believe it or not, in the whole show, I only had one little minor mess up, and it wasn't a mess up. It was just I forgot to, I do a trick in the middle that don't work, and it didn't happen. But at the very end of the show, I end by saying, yeah, I make fun of the teenager, and I'll say, yeah, he's going to remember the mistake I made, and not remember all the fun that we had, and just look back, and then the mistake turns out not to be a mistake. Well, I left that part out, and people were already leaving, and I mean, kind of like. And I had to go, whoa, Jason goes, you didn't do this. And I went, oh, everybody come turn around. I'm sorry, just for a second.
Recollect the audience.
Yeah. But normally that would have destroyed me. Something like that. Leaving a line out, leaving, to be on the road and do a show and something happens, you didn't say the right line, or I didn't do the right thing, or I messed, if you're good enough at your profession, you can mess up and nobody knows it, but you know it. I could never get over those moments. I wouldn't forgive myself for a long time for just going, oh. And sometimes it was as simple as not saying a joke, a line that I forgot. And then I should have said that. I wish I'd have thought of that. And I can't believe I didn't do it. And I let that get to me so much.
Well,
different things.
Stephen, I remember one time you had a situation on stage where you just misjudged the situation. You had a volunteer and it just wasn't quite what you thought it was going to be. And I remember that when you came off the stage, it so tore you up, the fact that you made a sort of just a misjudgment of the situation, that you were very serious there for like a week of, I'm done, I'm out, I'm not doing this anymore, based on this one slight mistake.
Well, I'm sure. I
mean, we don't have to get into it, but I'm just saying it's interesting that we do that to ourselves. That's a thing that we do to ourselves as entertainers.
Yeah, I think it's any creative type is really like that. I think we all three of us probably speak for all entertainers in that regard, that it's like, oh man, just exactly what you said, Stephen. I can't believe I blew that line, or I missed that joke, or whatever. How do you mind if I ask you? I think this is probably good for your listeners as well. Is how it sounds like you still kind of battle it. I think we all do. So it's not just you, but how do you personally? What tool do you use to kind of help say, oh my gosh, wait, it's not as bad as it seems. It might seem like it, but it's really not that bad. How do you deal with that? How do you get through it?
And the joke,
I think that's a tool I might just write down and put in my arsenal too.
Well, the show that Jason's talking about is I got a guy up that was special needs, but mentally challenged person that I thought I'd met earlier, and he wasn't that way. He was some guy. So I thought he was a magician that I knew earlier that was just messing with me, was trying to make things hard, but he was not. He was just really confused, and he was, just had problems. And I didn't get it. I didn't see it. And it took too long. And I did some jokes on his behalf and kind of and I'm going to be honest, 80-90% of the audience didn't even notice it. They thought it was a funny moment. And the way you made fun of that guy, and you really put him in his place, but I knew it. Yeah. And once I realized
that's rough.
That, my God. And I thought, if I got to the point where I can't recognize that, we all do that. You get somebody up there and then you realize, oh no, you're in trouble. And the first big corporate job I got is I got a little girl up on stage, and I do something with sponge balls, and it's like multiplying rabbits, but clown noses. And I asked her, I said, I need you to hold this. And she goes, I don't have thumbs. And the little girl was born without thumbs. Wow. And it was an Opryland theme park. There was a ton of people out in the audience and stuff. And it was just that moment. And she kind of went, I'm sorry, I don't have thumbs. And I went, well, that's why I picked you. I've been waiting for a girl without thumbs all day. It's about time you came. And so we can still do that. And we did the show, but her dad owned this company, and he just said the way you handled my daughter was so great, and you made her feel proud of who she was. And he hired me for 10 years for his company picnic party and stuff. But it was so now to the point where Jason was, I missed the moment. I didn't recognize that. I didn't do, so I thought you need to get out. You can't to do it. I had several people just call me. I guess one of the biggest things, I had nowhere else to go. But
that's why you didn't quit.
my wife's going, no, you get back out there. And, no, you know what? Just Billy, it's just it. We're going to make, now I open up for my son, who has a way younger audience base than I am fine. Give me people my age, I can kill. But I'm not the most politically correct person, and I don't always, I don't think the way the young people think and know that stuff. But now, but it's embracing who you are, really, I guess, and that's what we're going to hear from you in a second. Realize that, hey, look, I'm an old guy. I've been around a long time. I'm going to, I'm not ashamed of who I am, and just go on. I can turn when I first come out with opening up for my son, and he's got 2,000 people in a theater. And the first joke I do is I make fun of some guy sitting up front about his clothes. They kind of go, what? And they don't know what to think. But by the end, they loved me, and because they get to know me and stuff like that. So I've learned to just slow down my character and not be so brass right away. And people know, and I realize I play an idiot, and that's
so
that helps, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
I think that really
here's
helps.
what's interesting to me about what I've just taken away from the last couple of minutes. So one of the things I heard you say is that entertainers, not just entertainers, I'm going to say everybody, but we all come from an entertainment background. So what I'm hearing you say is that we have the opportunity, when we see it and we can identify it, to empower other people and make them feel special, to give them a moment that makes them, that highlights them, that might be a moment they remember for the rest of their life, possibly. Well, and so we have this ability to create this incredible moment, this incredible high. But then we also, when we step away from the stage, the incredible high that we can create also can become an incredible low. And just as powerful as the moment is when we're empowering somebody, that can also be negatively that strong against us and our own mental states when we're not doing what we love to do or what we feel like we're supposed to be doing. Does this sound right to you, Billy? Am I wrong on this?
It reminds me about Billy, because I don't know a ton about Billy, but I do know that you had a career that was doing really, really well, and you just walked away from it so that's that experience of going, okay, I'm just going to stop for a while. And so I'm sure at that moment you were going through all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I know a little bit, but tell everybody.
Sure. Yeah. By the time my career really took off, I was performing coast to coast. I had a California agent, and he kept me really busy. And at that time, we had just had a newborn baby. So it was my wife and I going out on the road at that point. And we were doing youth conventions and things like that. So anything from churches to high school assemblies to church events, but we were gone all the time. So we might be home maybe 2 days a week to see the baby. And I just realized for me, and I have other entertainer friends, excuse me, on the road, that, good for them. They homeschool on the road, whatever they have to do. I just knew for me, it wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. I was out speaking to youth, and here I was as a new dad, and I couldn't even be with my kid. So for me, I got to a point where I had a very lucrative career, in that market. And one would probably think that's not possible, but it is, and it was. But I just decided to walk away from it. I called my agent and I said, as of such and such a date, I'm done. He says, but you still have contracts. I said, if you'll work with me, I'll find somebody to fulfill those contracts. I'll hook you up, make sure that's all good if you're okay. But I just want to be a dad. I want to get out of this.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. Because magic was something, and entertaining and speaking to people was something that I knew all my life. And at that point, I was also sharing my story, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But I was sharing a lot about myself and integrating that with my shows and my magic. But when I got off the road, I had no idea what I was going to do because magic and speaking was something that I did pretty much all my life. Long story short, once I did get off the road, I got a job working in the printing industry, which that was a background that I had had. So I ran press for a while and did some things in the printing industry that way. And I was also trying to come up with some ideas that I could do to make better money than like when I was on the road. So I had actually had some illusions and magic props that I designed for myself. And I thought, well, what if I could create those and manufacture those and sell them? So you might have somewhat of your audience might not be familiar, but a magician will, oftentimes if they're not going to create a trick themselves, they'll buy a trick. So I had these tricks, and long story short, I was able to build a business with that. And before I knew it, I had a 3,000 square foot workshop, and I was knocking out magic tricks and shipping them all over the world, left and right. And what started out to be a really great thing really was a big downward spiral for me. I not only ended up working like 18-hour days, 7 days a week, but I ran that business completely into the ground, destroyed my marriage. My wife left me. I ended up filing bankruptcy. That whole business, all my magic, all my tools, everything gone. Hundreds of $1,000s worth of stuff. But in the mix of all that too, I should point out that when I got off the road, I became very depressed, and I didn't really know why I was depressed. I had no idea at that time why. But in hindsight, and getting some help through some of that depression along the way, I realized that here I was. We talked about doing shows, and then I said about going to a hotel room and being a little bit depressed. Like you have that high and then you have that low. I was at a point where I was low all the time, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, here I was in this workshop building, creating all this stuff, which was great. I loved that end of it, but I wasn't in front of people. I wasn't doing what I truly loved to do. So became very depressed. And I should back up also and say that depression hit me at a very early age. When I say an early age, at about 18, actually. I came from a background of a father who was an alcoholic, and he wasn't around much, and mom and dad were always split up. I went to, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many schools I went through growing up. But by the time I was 18, with having some of the magic accomplishments, I felt good, but it didn't sustain me. It didn't sustain my mental health. And it was 1987, I guess it was. I took a bottle of sleeping pills, and I just laid down and I waited to die. And I thought, this is it. This is it. I'm done. I want to be done. And to my surprise, I actually woke up 3 days later. I was covered in vomit, and nobody found me. It was a miracle that I was still alive. And in hindsight, I think of that and I think, wow, somehow I have a plan. I have a purpose in my life. I don't know what that is just yet. But obviously that didn't click back then. but I just kind of muddled through life after that. And, before I know it, I was back into the swing of doing more shows, and then also sharing that story of suicide. And I'm kind of telling the story a little bit backwards, but I said I mentioned that I did shows for churches and schools and youth groups and things like that. I was sharing my story of suicide then, and then all of a sudden I come off the road and I'm back to this depression all over again. I'm back to trying to take my life again after a divorce, and I'm losing the business and losing everything I owed. And I don't know. I think it was certainly a struggle, but one of the things that I think I recognized through that last time, this would have been in the early mid 2000s, I realized that it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to say, I need this help. And it took a lot to do that. It really did, because I thought, how can I go out and speak to people about depression and suicidality? And here I am, I'm back to all this crap again. This sucks. But I was able to kind of move forward, go to the hospital to get the help that I needed. And it was a very humbling thing. But you know what? Maybe not so much, because of the fact that I had lost everything. I lost my marriage. I lost my business. I lost my kids for about a year. They went to go live with, after the wife and I split up, they went to go live with relatives for about a year while I got my life together, or tried to get my life together. And but today, I can honestly say the best thing I ever did was just to reach out for help. And I still struggle with depression at times. I think, oh my gosh, if people aren't struggling with depression during this pandemic year, I don't know what. I mean, I think we all deal with it to some degree, maybe some more than others. But I don't know. For me, those days that I felt that depressed to the point where I just wanted to end it all, they're gone. They're absolutely gone. And as I said, I still have my days where I feel depressed. There's still days I don't want to get out of bed, believe me. But I have a plan. And that plan is, you know what? If the only thing you do today, Billy, is get up, go get a shower, and get dressed. If that's as good as it gets today, that's as good as it gets. But you at least made an effort to move forward and not be stuck in it. So, that's one little tool that I use, and that's just one. There's several things.
I was going to say that what you're sharing often was my biggest fear in my life, because if you go back to the very first podcast that me and Jason did together, I talked about my trying to take my life when I was 18, and was always that fear, would it ever come back? Because I was, I did it. There's no reason apart from God that I'm here. There was no mistake made. I would have done it. I was found by a roommate that came in and wasn't even supposed to be home. Just came off from, he worked nights and came in and wasn't supposed to be there. And if he hadn't got sick and came home from work, he wouldn't have found me. And then he got me into the hospital, and they did everything they did to keep me alive, and went through but I've always had that fear that it would come back, and the point that you're that you were saying, there's still times where you get depressed, and when you get down and you go through all that stuff, you go, oh, I wish, and you make mistakes, but you can't ever have those thoughts of suicide again. You got to realize we were given this second chance, and that can't happen. We got to, I had to realize that would have been the biggest mistake of my life by far. I got 3 great kids. I got to count them, 6. I got now 7. We got an extra grandchild. My daughter's adopted a little boy, working on it. And you know, for their sakes alone. None of them would be a part of our lives or anything if I would have got my way when I was 18. And so, I mean, I think for those people listening, that it's not uncommon because, you know, to go, all right, I'm over it. Something like this was in my life, but it's not uncommon to fall back into that depression sometimes. You just got to know where that line is.
I think a reminder that I always really strive to remind myself of when I feel my lowest, like even now, if I feel my lowest, I really have to step back and say, you know what, it is temporary. And honest to God, and anybody who's gone through deep depression realizes that, you know what, when you're going through it, it's crap and it doesn't feel temporary. But for me, I'm kind of able to harness that back and say, you know what, it is temporary. It sucks, but it is temporary. I don't even have to have a plan right now how I'm going to get through it, but just at least recognize that it is temporary and I will get through it. And then begin, once you talk yourself off that ledge, you can start working on a plan, to a positive plan. And if you don't know those answers, here again, I've just realized that for me, and not everybody can do this, but for me, it's okay to reach out for help. If I don't know how to fix it, it's okay to say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can you? Would you? People are willing. People really are willing to help if you just give them that opportunity. And sometimes that's a stranger. Sometimes it's somebody I know. I can remember being so depressed to a point where I'd call friends and they either just didn't want to hear it anymore or they just didn't have time. And boy, when you're going through that crap, that's like the worst time because you're like, now you really want to give up because they're not there for you. Right. So another strategy and a tool that I have in my arsenal is, you know what, if I call somebody and I can't get through to them, or if they can't talk, next, and I go to the next person and I find whatever I can do to really get through it. And yeah, I'm not sitting here saying I got my life all together. I definitely don't. I struggle just like you do. And it's a rough battle, but here again, I think a lot of it is just recognizing, you know what, it is temporary. And you had mentioned that about how you wondered if it would ever come back. Has it come back at all in any degree? And if so, how do you deal with that, Stephen?
Now, you know what, I've had maybe a few times where I thought, okay, you know, almost the George Bailey, I wish I was never born moments. But then again, I watched that movie, Wonderful Life. If you haven't ever seen it, I was in my 30s before I saw it. And but it was life changing, you know, because I believe in it totally. But I'm not going to say that it's never come to the point where I ever thought method or what would I do next or how would I do it or you know, should I be afraid to put myself in that situation? No, not with all the blessings and everything I have. I think faith has a ton to do with it. But also for me, it's always been reaching out and helping other people. I know a guy, I'm not going to tell you who, but that I knew that once struggled with some things that he didn't even know he was struggling with. And with Tourette syndrome. And I knew that I had to, you know, so if I was worried about Jason and getting him and then I ain't worried about myself. And if I'm worried about my kids and grandkids, and if I'm helping other people, and I think it helps. And Billy, you find this out because you're a speaker and you do this, and you put yourself out there enough. When you talk about it, that itself helps you.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too, Stephen. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can. I think, especially entertainers. I think now that I think about it, you know. Entertainers always feel like they have to be on, and especially magicians with the perception of, well, I'm not going to share about my personal life. I have to make everything look like it's perfect.
wouldn't want
I
it to.
just think that's a bad place to be. But I mean, for me, I think it's a bad place to be. I think it's really important just to be open and honest, because you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care how talented you are or how much money you have. The bottom line is, you know what? Eh, you need to be happy with you. You have to find hope, and I think that was a big one for me. Is that was another key, is finding hope,
Yeah.
because
So
I'm amazed that Jason's kept his mouth shut this whole time.
that's because we haven't
I've
let
been-
him talk. But
I
yeah,
know,
I want
I've
to
been
hear
very,
about Jason and hear about, yeah, I want to hear how you
no,
got
yeah,
through
the
some of
good
your
thing about it
adversity
is
for sure.
that, you know, we had problems and we both took the easy way out. You know, we both
Yeah.
said, I'm out of here. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's not only is it the wrong thing to do, it's the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
It's the cop out instead
Yes,
of
it is.
your problems and stuff. And when I met Jason with his Tourette syndrome, I mean, Jason, come on, you are where we were, because I remember you not wanting to share your story,
so it's true.
with
Yeah,
your
no.
honesty, but you know, just to be honest about who you are, because you felt it was a weakness.
Oh yeah, I
That's the way
totally.
we are.
Yeah, I totally thought that it was a weakness, and I didn't want anybody to look at me and say, "Oh, look at oh, you're so," I didn't want them to look at me and say, "Oh, you're such a good magician for somebody with Tourette syndrome." I didn't want to. I wanted to be, quote unquote, judged my ability for just being judged against everybody else. I wanted people to say, wow, you're great at what you do because you're great at it. And I had no interest in talking about it. I thought it was my weakness. What the interesting thing about it is that, and it took, as we know, because we've talked about this in one of the earlier podcasts when I told my entire story, is that one of the things that I found out was that when I finally, after years of badgering that somebody did, somebody that I know who happens to be a co-host of this podcast, badgering is not the right word, but prodding and
Pretty
prodding,
close.
saying, "Hey, get out there, you got to talk about this." What I found out is that the moment that I was willing to be, I could do my show and I could get fantastic responses. I could do magic, I could do all the different things and connect with people in the way that magicians do. But the moment that I completely was wide open and I was willing to get, the proverbial, get naked in front of the audience, so to speak, I'm going to get completely vulnerable with you. I'm going to let you in on my deepest, darkest secret. And the moment I did that, it was a new feeling. It was a new experience with the audience that I connected with them in a way that I had never connected with them before. And now people were coming up to me and telling me very personal things of their own, because it's like the magic was the thing that got them interested in me. And then the story and the vulnerability and the connection is the thing that made me a real person. I mean, I often, when I talk to magicians, I sometimes think that I sometimes say to magicians, the problem with magic is that we are Superman and there's a big giant wall between me and my audience. I know this stuff. I'm not going to tell you. You can watch what I do, and that's the end of this. But there is no give and take. But the moment that I was willing to tell them about who I, my fears and my, what I thought, quote unquote, was a weakness. But once I got vulnerable, now I was a real person who had these unique skills, somebody they wanted to know more about, somebody that they felt a real personal connection with, and somebody that they felt like, I had shared something extremely personal. Now, I say that to say this. I heard what you said, Billy, about God, what you were talking. Well, here's my question. So I think because I talk to people about some high level stuff when I share, and I say, and I tell people, I say, hey, listen, if you're dealing with something, just remember that this is a season. There are seasons of life, and this is a moment in time. If you have an average lifespan, you have approximately 80 years of life in the United States of America. That's the average. And if this is something that is happening to you at this moment, just keep in mind that it is a short period in time in a much bigger picture. But the more I think about that, sometimes I think to myself, that's very high level. that's very like logical and it makes perfect sense. What I want to know are there any things that you can do that, because I think that what we have to do, and one of the things that like I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, this pandemic has tested me like nothing before. I have had to deal with some really bad thoughts in my own head, questioning my choice of careers, questioning my direction in my life. I have thought about stuff and thought to myself, did I waste my life, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But then, so my point is, after saying all of that, sometimes you just have to find a way to change your emotional state. And it can be something as simple as, I mean, for me, like, okay, should I play this depressing song, or should I play this song that makes me want to go, train like Sylvester Stallone in Rocky? What are the techniques that I use to get myself in a different place? Is this something you've ever done before? What am I talking this? I'm really talking about like real world stuff that can change your emotional state.
Absolutely. The other day, I guess it was last week, I can't remember what the scenario was, but a friend reached out to me on Facebook and says, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "I don't know. I've been going through a little bit of depression. My business is down, just like a lot of guys. So it's easy to feed into." And as I was talking to him, this was something new that I just kind of made up. I said, "You know what? I'm going to do something different today than I've either ever done or something that I don't do frequently." And I think sometimes just transferring, just to do something different. That day, I went for a bike ride. Can't even tell you the last time I went for a bike ride. But I got the bike out and said, "I'm going to go for a bike ride." And it was just enough of a change where it got me out of the same routine. It got me out of the feeling sorry for myself. It didn't fix everything. It wasn't a miracle sort of working thing, but it changed my pattern. And I think that's another key, is if you can change that pattern, it doesn't have to be monumental. Something as simple as a bike ride for me was magical. It was something that really worked to just kind of clear my mind. I was getting the exercise that I needed, because God knows I need that after sitting in the house all the time from the pandemic, right? So, so I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question? I think that's real world, and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering.
Yeah. So it does answer my question, and it kind of leads me to something else you were saying. It makes me think about this. Something else you said is that on your bad days, you just literally say, "I am going to do this. I'm going to get up. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to change clothes." What that made me think of is another. This is. I mean, what you're using is a technique that it seems to me like a progression of events. If I do this one thing and I do this other thing, then you're building momentum. So tell me, if you can think back, and I don't want you to I just want you to think about this. How often has the progression gone from, okay, all I'm going to do, because is get up, and now all I'm going to do is take a shower. And because I've heard people say, I forget where I've heard it, but I've heard people say, do the next right thing. I think it's something that you hear about in, somebody told me that this is something that they were taught when they were dealing with, they were in some sort of a recovery program. And the idea was, when you don't know what to do the next right thing. So does building that momentum get you to, does it help? Like if you get up, that's step one. Take a shower, step two, change clothes, step three. And then the next thing is you're building momentum. How often do you keep moving forward?
Probably not as much as I should, or as much as I'd like. But here's what I do. In those moments, I at least give myself recognition. And like I say, for the average person, I think, so what? You got up. Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
I went to work. I worked all day, blah, blah, blah. But for me, if that's the only thing I can do, I at least recognize that and say, okay, I did it. I did that. Because I know on my worst day so yes, it does give you momentum. I think it's just like any goal. You have to start here to build your next step and your next step until you can reach the top of the steps, right? So it's the same with this. Am I successful at reaching the next step the same day? Usually not. if I'm being very honest and, blunt about it, and I don't. So, on those really bad days, getting out of bed is all I can do. But the good news is I'm not sitting there wallowing in self-pity. And I think that's, I guess I should be careful how I say this. I think there are people out there that do have depression, clinical depression, that will sit there and just say, there's no way out of this. I just can't do it. I can't do it. Well, if you tell yourself you can't, you're not going to. So for me, I just really try to reverse all that and say, you know what? When you're depressed, you kind of do want to have a pity party. You kind of want people to feel sorry for you. But I guess I've learned over the years that if you just take that step and you build that momentum, as you're saying, you're at least not in that funk. You're saying, you know what, it still sucks, but I'm getting to the next step. I'm moving forward. I'm getting there. So is that?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So here's my here's what I want, and I want to know what Stephen thinks and what you think as well. If we're talking, if somebody's listening, okay, and they're not dealing with like a deep depression, okay, because I think that most people that are going to be listening to this show are just kind of interested in the subject matter and they like hearing the different ideas. So let's just say somebody's listening to this and the simple fact of the matter is they're just feeling kind of beat up because this has been a difficult year. Feeling kind of like just a little bit, maybe they're lonely because they haven't been able to be around their family. Maybe their business is a little bit down and they're just feeling kind of like the world is kind of beat up on them a little bit. What one or two pieces of advice do we share for the things that we have done? And I'll start. I will tell you what I do. For me, my best technique for good mental health is exercise. That is my technique. My technique, 6 days a week, I get some form of exercise and I do it usually within the first couple of hours of the day because it changes my mental state. That's
good for you, because that makes up for me. Because I'm horrible with exercise. So you're doing it for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Stephen, if what are you finding that you're doing, or what are you finding that you can, if you're thinking about it and you're saying, okay, this is the thing that has helped me keep it together?
Well, I think for me lately, I'll just go because this is the season, and I'm not sure when this will be released and stuff, but I turned the TV off and just quit watching. Growing up, you might have had 15, 20 minutes of news that you could even watch at 5 o'clock about what's going on in the world. And even doing that, a lot of that time had to do with sports and weather. And now it's 24/7. And you can get caught up in all that world and just like, oh my gosh, so I've learned to turn that off. And I watch. Usually I could never have Christmas. I used to never do anything Christmas until my last show. Then after my last show, I would go buy all my Christmas. And sometimes it would be December 22nd. It'd be terrible. But that was just my rule. But then when I got home that night, I'd watch A Wonderful Life and wrap all my presents. And then I have to watch A Wonderful Life, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Grinch. I have to see those. And I used to be Peanuts. And I wanted to see all of those. Well, now I got it recorded and but I still do that ritual. I've already seen A Wonderful Life twice. And I watched it really close right after Thanksgiving. And just to go on and start doing it. I watch Hallmark movies. And I have to make my wife watch them. So it's not like she makes me, I watch them because I need that uplifting story. And you said that, what music do I listen to? So, it's just information that I put into my head. I try to listen to positive things, positive stories, and just get lifted up by all that stuff. So just what I listen to, what I do, and what I turn off.
So it's how you're allowing it's how you're programming yourself or allowing yourself to be programmed.
Yeah. And again, I start my morning with the devotions and stuff, and at night just to get my day going in that way and to spend that time. I think it's for me, it's refreshing and it go on I look at my day and what can I do for a couple people today? I try to do something for somebody every day, so I don't have to worry about. I'm not worrying about Steve Bargetti's problems.
Mhm. Okay. Billy, do you have anything? And you've already shared one fantastic technique of being willing to ask for help. Is that what you would say, or is there something else that you?
No, I'd say, because you did say, not everybody has dealt with the depths of depression like I have or some other people have. So, just in the commonality of we're all going through this pandemic, as you said, with exercise, with Stephen, turn the TV off. For me, my shutdown and to get away from any of that stuff is I try to spend time with my kids. Now, my daughter's not here as much anymore because she's 17 and has a boyfriend, but my son lives with me. So one of the things that we try to do on a regular basis is just sit around and play cards. So
Okay.
we'll play some Uno and some Skip-Bo and then some things like that, just to break the monotony up a little bit. But I think it's that, just having the appreciation also for those around you that you love, that you care about. And if you don't have that, I think another good thing to do, and I don't do this near as much as I should. I think we should all practice this. So, as I say this, I'm preaching to the choir here, is that's, reaching out and helping other people. I think get your mind off of all that. It's like, because all of a sudden your problems aren't there anymore. You're helping somebody else through maybe some of their struggles. And it's not about feeling good. It's just about breaking that monotony up a little bit of what we've all been dealing with. So,
Mhm. Yep.
so as I say that,
Right.
like I say, we think of doing that this time of the year, but we don't think of it too much other than that. So
Mhm.
as I say that, it reminds me that, I need to jot a little note and get better at that myself and
Yep.
to help people.
Yep. So tell us about tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, the direction you're heading in, what
Sure.
next steps look like for you, just as far as as business goes and
Sure.
just life in general.
Sure. Today finds me, I do very little shows. And of course, like a lot of entertainers aren't doing really many shows at all anymore. But I was only doing a couple shows a year anyway prior to COVID. But my main focus now is helping other entertainers. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a printing background and a marketing background. So my focus these days is really helping other entertainers and specifically helping to brand them. And to back up, one of the things that you had mentioned earlier, I got to try to figure out how to trying to figure out where we were in this, but you were saying about when you were able to open up and talk to audiences about your Tourette's
Yeah.
and being vulnerable. That's something that I even teach guys in the branding world because it's the number one thing, and that's just be genuine and be you. And I think, man, that is so powerful and good for you for being able to step up and do that. People appreciate that a lot more than probably your talent as a magician. I'm not saying they don't appreciate you as a magician, but I bet they really appreciate the fact that all of a sudden you're real. You're real to them. So little bunny trail there on branding, but anyhow, that's what I do now. I help entertainers, and I work a lot with magicians. I do branded type of props, and basically, for those that wouldn't understand, think of it like a movie where it's like product placement within a show. So they might want to brand themselves, or maybe they're working for a company or a corporation. They want to be able to brand them, but they want to do it in a fun and entertaining way. So that's what I do. And I have a product line, but I also create for other magicians. And I'm very blessed and very fortunate that I have clients in 72 countries around the globe at this point, and I get a kick out of it. I kind of love being behind the scenes these days. And ask me that 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. So that's what I do now, and it's a fun thing.
That is great. And you need to send us your website and any information. And when we put all this together, Jason will put that. It'll be showing up down here at the thing for anybody interested in more of what Billy can do for you.
And that's and that's not even my purpose here today is to plug that, but I'd be happy to. And the other thing for entertainers, I do have my own podcast, and the goal is to kind of do not so much what you guys are doing to uplift people's spirits and share stories, but I have guests on, and they help other entertainers out through their own experience and being in the trenches themselves. And so we talk about a whole lot. It's really
what's the name of the podcast?
It's the Branding for Entertainers podcast.
Branding for Entertainers podcast.
Yeah.
He even brands his podcast. Come on.
I even brand the podcast. Yes. The Branding for Entertainers podcast. You got it.
Exactly. Any final thoughts, Stephen?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of one of the tricks that you do.
Oh, okay. Yes, and I
think that would fit right now if you got that anywhere available.
You know what? I can. Yes, I can. I happen to have a. Are you talking about a piece of thread?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Hold on. Let me move the microphone. So, what's beautiful about this little piece of magic is that it uses 2 hands, 10 fingers, a piece of thread, and a little bit of magic. As we travel along the path of life, we hope and pray that our lives will be unbroken strands of joyful moments, positive emotions, and uplifting experiences. Your first car, the satisfaction of a job well done, the excitement of new love. Unfortunately, sometimes in life, it is broken by events, circumstances, and emotions that disrupt the lives we hope for. Loss, rejection, anger, and tragedy. One time I had a very wise man share a piece of knowledge with me, and that piece of knowledge is what got me through a very difficult time. And here's what he said. He said, hope can help us to see the invisible, to feel the intangible, to achieve the impossible, and hope can help restore our lives.
Wow.
And we hope that this podcast has connected with the folks that have been watching and listening. And Billy, are there any final thoughts that you want to share with anybody as we wrap it up?
Just that final thought that you had and what you said. Find hope and keep hoping, because things do and they will always get better.
Thank you for listening to Do the Impossible with Jason and Stephen. Please subscribe for future episodes. Our home on the internet is jasonmichaelsmagic.com/podcast. That's jasonmichaelsmagic.com/podcast. To contact us, please visit the website and fill out the form. Now go out and do the impossible in your world.